Here's one for you. So I am officially 3 weeks off the weed. 1 day shy of 3 weeks off the weed. I was a habitual or chronic user of cannabis for, as near as makes no difference, 2 decades. I found it, and as I do find it, to be a marvellous fucking substance, absolutely fucking fantastic. Not without its drawbacks, like everything. I've said it before. Hammers are great, you can build yourself a house with them, but not so great if you smack someone across the face with it. So, everything in moderation. You know, cannabis is no different than a hammer in the sense that it's a tool. It has an application, and that application can be put to good use, or it can have, you know, negative consequences. You know, it's like anything. Sugar is not bad for you. Too much sugar is bad for you. Eating fast food isn't bad for you, provided you're not eating it all the time. Everything in moderation, including moderation. It's no harm to have a bit of a blowout every so often. But one thing that I've noticed since giving up cannabis is, and just to be clear, when I say smoked it habitually for 2 decades, my thing was I'd have a couple of hits of a bong in the evening. So typically either just before the kids went to bed or after the kids went to bed, I'd have a bong hit in the evening. Or before the kids came along, you know, I'd be well home from work, I'd have got me dinner into me, and I'd be chilling out in the evening, and that's when I'd have it. Now, I suppose most people would have, let's say, a glass of wine or maybe a couple of beers or a couple of glasses of wine, and that's how I was consuming cannabis for the overwhelming majority. 99.9% of the time it was to unwind in the evening and to chill out. But one thing that I've noticed since giving it up is, if nothing else, my productivity has gone through the roof. I'm that bit more motivated than ever before to get things done. I feel a lot clearer in my thoughts and just generally feel better in my own skin. I haven't given it up entirely. I'm looking forward to having a smoke, but I'll pick my time. I'll probably do it earlier in the day and enjoy it a little bit more. I'll kind of maximise its effects. I'll most likely do it with somebody else as opposed to just by myself in the shed and then in and chill out. I don't regret doing it. I maybe regret doing it for as long as I did. I found it absolutely fantastic when I had young kids in the house because it just fucking mellowed me out a little. Especially when the kids were younger, I felt like consuming a small amount of cannabis made me a better dad. It let me relax. I'd be fucking stressed and pissed off and everything to be doing me fucking head in, and fucking kids not sleeping and fucking wrecking your life and then you'd have a fucking smoke and everything would just fucking tone down a little. So it was fantastic for that. Now again, I have to stress this. This is relative to me, okay? This isn't general advice. This isn't what you or anybody else should do. I'm sure cannabis has saved many a person's life. I'm sure it's ruined many a person's life and everything in between. But looking back on my cannabis consumption, I feel like I was self-medicating. I feel like I was using it as anti-anxiety medication, essentially. And there's nothing wrong with anti-anxiety medication. And if you find something that works, fucking more power to you. Most people in Ireland, at least, use alcohol. And fucking, isn't it great that it's there to reduce your anxiety, to level you out, to fucking bring you down, and bring you down from too high of stress levels, not depress you. So alcohol in that sense is no different than cannabis. Absolutely fantastic drug, provided it doesn't become habitual and provided you don't become addicted to it, especially in relation to alcohol. Alcohol is one of the most addictive drugs that we fucking have, and cannabis isn't. I don't think cannabis is particularly physically addictive at all. Like, I was a daily consumer for 2 decades, say, and in the first maybe week I wasn't sleeping great. I had terrible nightmares and I was waking up almost as though I'd wet the bed. I was sweating that much at night. So I had bad sleep for a week after a daily 2-decade habit, which is, mild, relatively speaking. Not even relatively speaking, it's objectively mild. And again, that's not to say that if you give up cannabis, you'll have the same effects. We're all different. Our pharmacology is completely different in many cases. Drugs affect different people differently. Some people mightn't be able to give it up like that. Some people mightn't bother them in the least. They might sleep like a baby. They might sleep better than they ever did. But I suppose what I've learned is that I don't need it. I would have worded it, and how we word things is so important. I would have worded it in terms of I needed a bong hit to settle me. I would have needed a bong hit to cope with the kids. I would have needed was the key word. And like when you try and give up anything, whether it's sweets or fucking chocolate or crisps or takeaway or drink or anything, the justification that you'll come up with, like you become an intellectual black belt in excuses. And if you actually listen to yourself carefully, you will sound like such an addict. You'll say things like, I can give up whenever I want, and I don't really need it, and I just do it because I enjoy it. And you sound like a fucking junkie. You sound like a heroin addict when you start justifying why you haven't given up a drug, and not even necessarily a drug. It could be, anything, like I said, sweets, chocolate, crisps, takeaways, drink, smoke, whatever it is. But I suppose in closing, I'm all the better for it. I'm looking forward to having a smoke. I'll never go back to the habitualness of it. Fingers crossed. I don't plan to, at least, and I wouldn't like to think that I will. It served its purpose. I don't regret it. If I was to do it over, I probably wouldn't have let it run on as long as I did. But I did, so I'm not going to beat myself up about it. And one last thing. A big help in getting me to give it up was Andrew Tate. A guy who gets fucking nothing but shit thrown at him, basically, because of the few views that he has, especially in relation to women, that people don't tend to agree with. I personally don't agree with him. I think, for the most part, people should get married and have kids and not have side chicks, and shouldn't be, going around fucking bitches and all this fucking nonsense. He sounds like a 40-year-old, 4-year-old a lot of the time. But in relation to drug taking, he said something that kind of hit home. And it was specifically in relation to cannabis. He said the downside of taking drugs, particularly cannabis, is that it makes you feel good without deserving it. And that, I think, was what flicked the switch in my head. He's fucking right. You don't deserve that good feeling. You should earn that good feeling. If you're getting that good feeling from something you haven't earned, like, that's a fucking slippery slope. You need to earn your good feelings. So if you enjoyed that and it got to the end, there's a heap more of them. Check them out. And on that note, I'll chat to you soon.